Okay. I'm not seeing it quite yet. Okay, it looks like we're live. Yeah, and now I'm hearing it echo through all of my devices. Okay. So I think we are live. People are probably going to come in as they get the notification. I already see a couple highs in the chat. That's very encouraging. I figured it out how to do it on time this time, as opposed to the Fate and Fury live. But I guess we can just start and people will
jump in.
I guess jump in as they do. So hello everyone. Welcome to our Mother of the Moon release party live. I'm author Lina Amarego, as most of you probably know if you're joining this. And this is my very dear friend and audiobook narrator, Katie Morrowick. Katie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Katie, and I first kind of discovered Lina's books a couple of years ago, just before Daughter of the Deep was released, and I read it and I loved it, and I kind of messaged her being like, oh my gosh, I love your book, how did you become an indie author? And just was kind of obsessed. And then she was really nice when she replied to me, and then we ended up just being friends, and we've written together on like Zoom calls and stuff, and become pretty close. So yeah.
And as you all can hear, right, she's got a lovely voice. So as soon as she started reading something online, I was like, okay, well, that's going to be my audiobook narrator. And the rest is history. Although I will note for anybody watching, right, Katie does have a little bit of a cold. So if at any point she needs a moment of rest, we're going to be very graceful and give that to her, because she is such a trooper and she's so kind and helpful. And I appreciate you. All right, so we have a lot of fun planned for tonight. We've got a couple games that will result in giveaways for anybody participating in the chat. There's going to be an art print giveaway and a book giveaway. So please stay tuned for all of that, because I want to give you all free things. I'm really excited about that. But I did also get some questions via Instagram for the Q&A section. We're going to start with that and then maybe layer it in. If people in the chat have any questions, please feel free to jump in and be as vocal as you want, right? Because there will be interactive parts of this evening. Yeah, so I guess with all of that, we can kick it off with the Q&A. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, so Cass, I think she's here in the chat. Hi, Cass. She's asked a lovely question. What was the moment you realized you were officially done, and how did that feel?
So when I first saw this question, I got instantly teary. So I'm going to work my way through this without crying this time. I feel like there were several moments where it felt really done. I had always intended for this to be a trilogy, and I knew that I didn't want it to drag on longer than that, just because of the story structure. I knew Kira and Ronan's story specifically had a shelf life. And when I was writing Mother of the Moon, it took me a very long time. And I think that's because there were so many parts of me that did not want to be finished with this story. But as soon as the draft was finished, and I sent it to beta readers, and then I ended up writing another 20,000 words for it because I was convinced that it needed a whole other sub arc with other characters. And my editor, Renee, read it, and she's incredible. And she was like, this is good, but these arcs, it's too much. It's not what you're trying to tell in this story. And in that moment, I kind of realized that it was just this attempt to elongate the life of the book, and because I didn't want it to be done. And that was kind of, I was like, oh, this story was finished a while ago. And then every time, like, it came back after another iteration, right? So after editing, after proofreading, after like all the formatting tweaks and stuff, I was like, oh, this is the last time I'm going to do this for this series. And there was just like another sense of finality in all of that. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but if I feel like I tried to push it past where it was supposed to be, and the book very much so told me itself that, like, no, we're done with this part.
kind of an accomplishment feeling, or was it a bit of a, oh, that's it now, like I'm sad?
Definitely both. I have really bad imposter syndrome. So there's parts of me that were always like, well, I wrote a book, but that's really cool, but I didn't finish the series. So actually finishing the trilogy feels really, really good. And there is that accomplishment where I'm like, okay, nobody's going to be able to take that away from me. I finished it. And these characters have been such an integral part of my life for 4.5 years. I don't know who I am yet outside of my identity as the Children of Lyr author. So there is a really bittersweet feeling to saying goodbye to something that has taken up so much of my space and my time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Cass, for asking that question and making me sad all over again.
Thanks, Cass, for just cueing the tears. Okay, so was there any storyline apart from, you mentioned the ones that kind of got cut? Renee suggested you cut, but was there a storyline that got cut that you wanted to tell but didn't have the time or space?
So I think there are parts of me that really did want to tell those stories, right? So Elian had his own arc, and the arc is still in Mother of the Moon, right? But he had POV chapters, and it really was expanded on. And then Saith had an arc as well. And the two of them do feel a little bit unfinished for me, just because there were so many revelations for them in this last book. I know. And that's kind of where I had to wrestle with myself. There are potentials for spinoffs of the series, right? Elian, Saith, there are potentials for spinoffs with Reagan and Vienne that I have brewing, and I'm trying to give myself some time before I really think about, because it's very intriguing and I don't want it to distract from like other goals that I have for writing. So yeah, there are stories that are not finished within this world, but Kira and Ronan's absolutely is, at least in this format.
Yeah, I kind of love that you did do those POVs, because I did get to read them, and it's fun to just explore them, even though I agreed with Renee, like they didn't quite fit with the rest of it. But yeah, I think it's just fun that you got to explore that with those characters, because they're there. I mean, you might as well, you're the author, you can kind of do what you want. So
I also see in the comments Cassidy, who's my proofreader, saying that her and Renee are still fighting about the arcs that were cut, because I actually think Cassidy was one of my beta readers too. So my beta readers saw part of those arcs, and then I wrote even more of them because apparently 180,000 words wasn't enough. I was close to like 197 or something like that. It was giant. And then Renee was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "You're right."
Okay. So the next question is, what are the top 3 things you've learned from your writing journey of these books? Do you have a list?
So I don't have a list, but I do think that the writing process through this series has reflected a lot of my own like journey of growth as an individual. And I think that something that I really struggled with Daughter of the Deep that I embrace fully now is just the idea of being a lifetime student. Every single like critique and criticism of Daughter of the Deep hit so deeply because I had so much of my like worth and identity tied to it. Whereas now I'm like, every critique and criticism I really relish because it makes me a better writer. And I think for A Mother of the Moon especially, I took that into more consideration, and I was really focused on, okay, not just finishing this story, but how am I going to grow as a writer through this? And I think each book, at least from craft perspective, I feel like gets better, and that's an accomplishment as well. So I don't know if I have a top 3 for it, but that kind of encompasses the whole,
what
I've learned.
Writing the 3rd one, you kind of just realized how much you'd improved just in terms of your process and the writing style. Like, you reading back, you were like, this is actually pretty good, like compared to what you thought of the previous. So
right. And I feel
is that just for me?
Oh no. I think I'm still okay on live, but we will see. Can you hear me, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. And
So
can you see me?
yes.
Okay.
We're back.
All right, we're gonna
5 minutes.
keep going, right? Sorry, technical difficulties. But yeah, I think it was also really interesting because we were doing the Daughter of the Deep audiobook when I was doing the promotions for Sister of the Stars, and I was drafting Mother of the Moon. So it was really there was a lot of like seeing the work all at the same time and just seeing how different some of the skills were in Daughter of the Deep and Sister of the Stars from Mother of the Moon.
I've got to say, just putting that out there, like that was good. It's just you see, I guess you just became even more practiced as a writer is what we would put it as.
Absolutely. And I was 21, 20 when I started Daughter of the Deep.
Yeah.
Or no, I was a little older. I was like 21, 22. Anyway, so I've also grown up a little bit and experienced more life, and I do think that helps. I don't know who says it, and so I'm going to butcher this quote, but there's a quote by somebody can tell me who it is, that's like, the best thing for writers is to go live life, because lived experience just helps enrich the craft so much more. And I fully attest to that. I think that like the more you can go and experience yourself, the better your work is going to be.
Yeah. Like the world is not in your books, it's out there.
Yeah. Beautiful. You said it better than I did. Oh, okay. So we have a comment question from I think that's actually AJ Lexa. But what has my biggest challenge in the series been? I feel like there were things about this series specifically where I wrote book 1 with vague ideas of book 2 and 3, and then having to like go back and layer in and like cross-reference and check myself to make sure that I wasn't like actively contradicting things I'd said in earlier books was really hard, because I definitely am, I have to plot in order to work on things, but I think I'm a pantser at heart, and I want to just kind of like go and write my just whatever I want to do, and I have to be really consistent. So I think that was, as far as writing a series go, what the hardest part was for me, and like finding ways to like layer it in so it seemed intentional even if it totally wasn't.
I do that. Yeah, I remember a couple of messages where you were like, yeah, I meant to do that all from the start. That was what it's supposed to be.
And I think it's so funny because Katie is so good at finding like Easter eggs, and she'll be like, you mentioned this. Is this foreshadowing from book 1? Is this foreshadowing this part in book 3? And I'm like, sometimes it was not even a thought at all. And I was like, yes, Katie, yes, that was, I'm a mastermind. I planned it the whole time.
Everything was planned.
I think I just get lucky a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the talent's there somewhere. You meant it somewhere.
Yeah.
If you had to choose a character POV to retell the series in, who would you choose? And I think I know who I would choose, but you say.
I want to know who you'd choose.
Okay, I would choose Ronan, just because I think he would have such an interesting view of everything, because he was on the other side of the island for that time, and like the 4-year gap. I would love to see his perspective, like coming into it for kind of the whole thing.
I did, for the bonus, I think, in the Nerdy Book Box edition of Daughter of the Deep, there is a chapter 1 from Ronan's perspective, and I loved writing that so much. I do think that Ronan for book 1 would have been so interesting, because book 1's the only one that's really just Kira's perspective, because obviously if anybody else had a say, right, we'd know all the secrets. But I also think going forward, I would love to see like things from the periphery. So I think that's why I really wanted to write Saith's arc, because she sees so much, and I would love to see kind of like the background weavings that she does. And her or Reagan, just because I feel like Reagan is one of the most impacted characters in the series, right? So much happens that directly changes her life, and we only get her experience through other people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them see her through the lens of she's a kid, right? And I would love to explore what that impact really did to her from the internal perspective, right? To be this young budding teenager and to have her whole world just changed hit after hit, right? I was not kind to Reagan. So
I can imagine Reagan like writing a diary, but like full, just like every emotion that she's feeling and her revenge plan and like all of this. That would be like a first person diary, I can imagine, with Reagan.
And for Mother of the Moon, right, the first part of the book, she really is the ticking time bomb, right? Everybody feels just how angry and hurt she is over the events of book 2. So I would be scared, but I would also love to tap into what she's feeling, because I really think that she has a lot to say that she doesn't get to say because, people are literally afraid to touch her at the beginning of book 3, except for Griffin, because he has no inhibitions and no fear whatsoever. So we have some other questions coming in, and I want to keep it moving because I'm rambling already. So Kelly asked, did I ever reach a point where I started procrastinating writing because I didn't want it to end? And how do I give people advice struggling with that? Yeah, this book took me double the time that the other 2 did, and I don't think it's because it's longer, although it is a little bit longer. There was like a 4 or 5 month gap where I didn't write, and at the same time I had a lot going on in my personal life, but I absolutely think that I was using that as an excuse because I didn't want to like also experience like the loss of this world. So I have mixed advice, right? So I have found that for my writing process, letting myself explore other projects really helps me re-engage in creativity, because then I don't feel as stuck in where I am. So I think Mother of the Moon, I did the most word count when I was actually writing my stories for A Fate and Fury, just because allowing myself that space to jump into something else made it safe to come back to this, right? It was exciting and I was feeling creative again. But also like giving yourself the rest that you need, I think is so important. I think there was part of it that there was so much pressure for me to finish this book fast that it wasn't being done right. And then I was getting so stuck in my head about it. So I'm always in favor of like taking care of yourself from burnout. If you feel like you are overwhelmed and you feel that resistance, sometimes giving yourself the permission to say, no, okay, I'm not going to do this then. I'm going to let myself disengage. Sometimes it just allows your body what it needs to recalibrate. And I always found it easier to jump back in after I gave myself an intentional break. So I hope that helps. Whoever, I think that was Kelly's question.
Do you want I think there's another one in the chat.
Okay.
So, who has your favorite narrative voice?
Oh, Ronan, hands down Ronan. And he's the hardest one to do because it's so good.
Oh,
but he's such a storyteller. And that's part of his character. And I think that in Ronan's voice, I really allowed myself the most, like, and I got to relish it and savor it. And I let him have the most, just like the prettiest lines. I feel like his perspective always feels like trying to write poetry. And yeah, because and he loves it.
Poetry.
So yeah, that's a great question. I love writing Ronan, and it's so hard because I feel like Kira is so just emotion driven that it's easy to just like let it be an emotional dump and soup and figure it out after and then edit it to make it pretty. And Griffin, I think there's an easiness about it just because he's fun even in the saddest, hardest parts, and he has some really intense, like, sad emotional moments as well through this, but there's always that humor to fall back on that makes it easier. So Ronan's the hardest but also the most rewarding because I love letting him be that storyteller.
Love that. Did you want to go on to the what if questions?
Yeah. And then we can always circle back to more questions either. So this is a what if section where I'm going to answer just because I love my character so much. And this series is so character driven that I love these little headcanon moments. But this is also something where I would love for people in the chat to hear your opinions too, because I think the most rewarding part of this entire series for me has been watching other people enjoy and love and connect with my characters as well. So we've got some what if slash who would you go to character questions. And this is definitely open for participation from the onlookers.
Just to catch up on the chat, Cass said that she's definitely done the accidental foreshadowing too. And that Reagan would be her choice too for the narrative voice. And her scenes with Griffin are chef's kiss, but also heartbreaking. Yeah. I love their scenes. And that's because you write pure poetry. Pure poetry, not poor poetry.
Well, thank you. It takes a lot. I feel like Ronan's perspective, I'm always sitting there just like, okay, how do I say this? How do I say this the best I can? Whereas the other ones, I'm just like, doesn't matter.
5 seconds.
Yeah. All right, let's play some what if games.
So this is like a kind of rephrasing of the if a bear and a shark had a fight, who would win? But it's if Blayet, Elian, and Siren Ronan had a fight, who would win?
I love this. I think it depends on the turf, right? So if they're in the water, obviously Ronan has the advantage. And he's so vicious in book 3. He really is so motivated that I think he kind of takes it either way, just because he's so yeah. But I think Elian would really give him a run for his money on land. And I love their dynamic in this book because they really have that, like, they're each other's checks and balances. When Ronan gets really into that, like, hyper focus, just I'd burn the world if it got me closer to my goal mode, Elian is typically the one that's like, hey, why don't we take a breath? Like, what if we just chilled?
A little bit.
So I think Ronan wins, but I think Elian lets him win too, right? Just as like, all right, now you've got it out of your system, buddy. We're good.
Sure thing. Okay.
I love the comments. Ronan all the way, on land or on water. Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, Ronan doesn't pull punches. I feel like Elian would be like, I don't want to hit my friend. He would, but he wouldn't want to.
I can totally imagine Ronan just completely having like, you know, before a fight where you have those kind of declarative, like, oh yes, and my friend, I'm going to beat you. He would have like a whole speech prepared before he like went to it.
Yeah, no, he would violate him verbally and then physically as well.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Okay, second question. Who would you go to for hair care advice? Reagan, Griffin, or Vegan?
So I feel like this is where I'm torn, right? Because Reagan and Griffin canonically have like very curly hair, and I have very straight, won't curl for my life hair. So I think those two are, I think Reagan's really just the best when it comes to that. She really loves that. And that's one thing I love about her, that she's okay with her girly side and like will braid anybody's hair if they let her. So I feel like she'd probably have the best advice, but I don't have curly hair, so I don't know if it would translate to hair type. But Vian has very straight hair. But he doesn't do anything. He's just one of those dudes that just like naturally beautiful, has no sense of like anything. He just, you know, wakes up that way. So I feel like his advice would be like really terrible. Like, I don't know, just like
brush it,
wash it sometimes. And it'd be like, all right, thanks for nothing, buddy.
Like, like Reagan's been telling him to stop using soap in his hair because it's not good.
Yeah, I know, he has like a 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, conditioner.
It's done.
And he wakes up like sparkling. So
exactly.
Cass says Griffin.
Oh, true. Vian just asks the wind to help him out with his hair. Maybe that's his
Yeah.
secret.
Yeah,
That's
probably. Just wind, always like wind blown, and not in the way where it's like in your face all the time, like what happens when I walk out in the wind. No, he just has that like Pantene commercial hair at all times.
yeah, he should do one of those. That would be great. And I just thought of this question because I have my answer and you probably know what it is. If you needed a big hug, who would you go to?
Griffin.
Yeah, it's just no brainer.
Or Rhett. Or Rhett.
Yeah, both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just I please. Rhett, I feel like, is that person for a lot of the people in the crew.
Therapist Rhett.
Therapist Rhett. Yeah, Rhett's evolution from book 1 is one of my favorites because he really just comes into himself, and then he's like, I don't know, he just is just solid for everyone else. But I also feel like Griffin does it too for people, right? Especially Reagan. He knows kind of just how, like, to meet people with what they need, right? So if they need a laugh or a fight or just something to blow off steam, he's there. But there are also some really touching moments, especially in this last book, where he's just like there with a pat on the back to tell people it's going to be okay. And oh my goodness, do I wish like everybody had a Griffin and a Rhett just like in their corner, like, hey, it's going to be all right.
Yeah, I love that. I would Rhett and he'd be sick of me, says Kat. I don't think he'd get sick of it. Like, he would pretend he's sick of you.
Exactly.
Actually be sick of you.
Yeah, it'd be like an eye roll, but then like totally he would do it and he would never actually complain. Somebody asked which book in the series is my favorite. I think the last one, but I don't know yet because I don't know. I don't know that I can actually think about that because it just makes me sad because yeah.
All favorite different ways, probably. Yeah, and going back to Elian and Ronan's fight, Elian would probably let him win and then tell Ronan that later. That's true.
But he would tell him like while they're fighting or bickering again, he'd be like, yeah, you know what?
You know what,
you win.
Stop bringing up last time.
Absolutely.
I love side characters who kind of steal the scenes, and Rhett was that for me. I adore him, and he's the most supportive boyfriend.
He really is.
I love that because obviously Griffin was very much a scene stealer throughout, but I feel like Rhett kind of crept up pretty quickly behind him, like taking over that.
As far as personality goes, Rhett is the closest to my actual husband. AJ, for anybody who knows, because he is so stalwart and just like quiet and reserved. He's not like a big talker, and neither is AJ, but he's just like always there and always present for people and like somehow knows how to say the exact right thing. He's a man of few words, but like always has the right ones. So I'm so glad that people love Rhett and the way he's grown in this series, because I feel like there's a very subconscious part of me that was like totally writing in my husband's like in that. So yeah, Rhett's my favorite as far as the book boyfriends go, just because he's so steady.
Love that.
Yeah, love that for me too. Whoever just said love that. That's Cass again.
Next, the next what if question.
Mm-hmm. Where are we? I'm sorry. Give me a moment. I'm trying to juggle technology and I'm so bad at this. Okay. Who would you trust to keep a big secret for you? I think
I'm quite hard about this one.
So I'm torn between two, right? There's part of me that says safe, because as far as secrets, she definitely has the most of them, but she's right. Do I trust her to know something? Exactly. And then the other one says Reagan, because I feel like Reagan always has tricks up her sleeves. But I think in the same vein, she sometimes gets a little bit more emotional and would just like blurt it out and then realize afterwards. It's probably safe. And then I would like make sure to pay her off really well, so she never spills it.
Yeah. I think it would be safe, if not for, I just have to keep on Safe's good side. Like, that's just the only thing. But I think probably Ronan as well.
Yeah.
I think probably trust him.
Yes, until it like interferes with his plans. Because again, he has such that like he will he will burn the world if it gets in his way kind of mentality sometimes. So if you're on his side, I agree. He's definitely a really good secret keeper. If you're in his way, he would just get out of it real fast. Kira would probably keep a secret so long as it didn't endanger her family. Yeah, Cass, I agree with that. She does. Yeah.
Oh, and like probably if we're counting more side characters as well, Raina, she would be.
Yes. Raina would, and she'd like have a cup of tea ready for you. And she'd be like, okay, what's going on? Don't worry, I'll help you hide the body. But like let's
sit down, have a cup of tea. All right.
Absolutely. And then she'd like would actually take it to the grave, would never tell a soul, and would just like be there if you're like need extra support down the line. Yeah, actually change my answer. It's 100% Raina. Oh.
Yes, Raina.
All right, next with what if, I guess.
Do you want to? I read the first three, so
yeah. I'll read it. Who would you borrow clothes from? So part of me wants to say Finna because I think she definitely has the best taste. And right, I don't know like that anything of hers would actually look good on me or flatter me because she's just like perfect. So she'd be like, oh, it doesn't fit you right. Pity. But she has the best wardrobe for sure. Yeah, and yeah, I'd see it.
Gowns.
How about for you?
I do like Kira's wardrobe, as you can see. I've got a bit of a blue.
But
I would love to wear like Cedric's captain coat. Like I feel like that would be so cool to be able to go off on the ship and you're wearing his coat and just feel the power of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love wearing like oversized, like somebody else's like jacket or sweatshirt too. My sister, I don't know if my family's watching, but my sister will steal my dad's hoodies religiously just because they're like big on her. And we will buy her all of the hoodies she wants, right? She has plenty of her own, but there's something about wearing like my dad's that she's like will always nab it. So I love that. I feel like that's such like a familial thing, right? Where you just like have that little piece of them with you. Yeah, that's a sweet way to look at it. Raina also probably gives great hugs. Correct, Cass. And Finna, yeah, she agrees. Also, I do think that there is a slight delay on the chat and the live versus what we're doing, right? So we'll try to be a little bit more intentional about that and create some space for everybody to actually respond. Okay, so we should maybe transition, I think, into the games that that actually give people prizes. And we can start that, and then we'll obviously give people a little bit longer to respond so we can accommodate for the delay. Okay, so the first quiz that we're doing, this is for character art prints, right? Because again, this is such a character-driven trilogy. We really wanted to see how well readers knew characters. So we know that most people haven't read Mother of the Moon yet. So we have some quotes that we've picked, and it's your job to guess correctly who said it, right? And so we know that most people will not know, and they're purposefully tricky. So we're going to try to like keep score as we go, but winner gets art prints sent to them of the characters by the gorgeous character art that I've shared everywhere at this point. Yeah, so
Great first one.
Yeah. I'll do the first one because you've already talked a lot and I know you're not feeling well. Okay. So the first quote is, "Great, who are you going to get killed this time?" And then we'll wait in suspense for a few moments so people can catch up. I think it's we picked a bunch of quotes while you're all thinking and catching up. we picked a bunch of quotes that are purposefully a little bit tricky. So yeah, I'd be really surprised if people get like more than like 3 right.
Yeah, mine is pretty delayed. It's like, I would say maybe a 20-second delay or something based on it's quite weird actually seeing ourselves still talking.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not looking at that at all because I'll get really anxious. Okay.
You can still guess, Cass, if you want.
Well, anybody who already has art prints or things, and if they still want to play, if you end up winning, you can choose who gets the gift, right? So if you've got a friend that you think would like a little holiday surprise gift, you can let me know and I'll send it there instead. So
I don't know who I would have guessed for this one. I feel like would I have got it? I think I would have got it just because I remember that line specifically when I read it.
I think it's this one. They get harder as they go. I think this one's pretty straightforward. Just after yeah, if you think the end of book 2 and who dies at the end of book 2, right, there are going to be some people that are very specifically upset by that.
Cass has guessed.
Cass has a guess.
So are we revealing at the end, or are we just going?
You know what? I think whoever gets it first gets the point, and then that moves it along, right? So Cass gets the first point, and Cass, if you end up winning, you can pick who you send it to. It's not Ronan, it is Reagan. All right, I'll read the next one. And I'm also thinking maybe we don't have to do all of the ones we picked out. So I'm going to jump to next one, which is, I'm not afraid of sailing, you twit. I'm afraid of sailing sober.
I like this one. It's kind of
this one.
Good.
Somebody said purposely not copying Cass. Copy or whatever. This one, I think this one's gonna be one of like, people are gonna have an instinct who they think is gonna say it, and it's not.
Yeah.
We're purposely making it hard. Maybe we made it too hard. I don't know.
But it's the you twit though that I think would throw it off.
Right. Yeah. I think the characters that other people would assume would have a very, very, very colorful way of saying that.
To be honest, let's be honest there.
I'm giving spoilers, so people
throw some names out. I think 2 of us are on this, so I think there's 6 people. So anyone of you 6, you can be guessing. AJ, start guessing.
All right. I think this one's a dud. I think we're gonna.
Kira.
It's not Kira. This is a tough one because she's not a huge character. She's a side character, right? So this one's from Catherine, who's one of the sirens. I think maybe we made this a little hard. We could also just jump to the next game.
We know these characters too well.
Yeah, you know what we can do, because I have a ton of the art prints. I think everybody that is watching live is a very, very kind person, right? I know that this is in the middle of the day for a lot of us on a Saturday, especially like West Coast, I'm thinking is pretty early. So everybody that's on the live, if you just comment and just will take attendance, I will send you an art print as a thank you, because I have plenty of them and there's not that many people. So just comment your name and I will make sure to send you an art print, and then I think we can move on to the next game anyway, which is way more fun. Cass said, I thought show or Catherine, but we didn't know if we were doing side characters. Yeah, we're purposely teasing, but everybody that's here is still gonna get an art print because I think we made this too hard. I think I would have had trouble with this and I wrote it. So all right, so the last game that we're gonna play, and then we can wrap up with some more questions because we have a few more. But the last game we're going to play, there's only going to be 4 rounds of it, and it's 2 lies, 1 truth, and it's a spoiler edition, right? So two things are lies, right? Do not happen in the book. And the third thing is a truth, right? So you guys have to pick out what you think.
Which one you think is true, right? So usually you play this game, you pick out the lie. So this time we pick out what you think is true.
And then the winner is going to get a book. So that's exciting. And if you already have the book and you don't want another one, you can tell me where to send it and I'll send it to somebody else. All right. Do we want to, Katie, do you want to do the first one and we can alternate?
Okay, so the first group of 3 you have to choose the truth from is 1, Griffin sinks the Lyr. 2, Griffin finds the lost sword of Arwen. 3, Griffin officiates a wedding. See, I was going over these for a bit because I know the book and it's still a bit tricky.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say anything because I know that I'll spoil it. So we can just wait and give people a chance to catch up.
Also, shout out to Ellie Rayner, who is here, who participated in your. You
just have books right on.
Whatever I can, I'm like, buy this.
And Ellie is also currently one of my critique partners for stuff that I'm writing now. So she has been an awesome support. So yeah, shout out. Okay, so we have a Griffin sinks the Keffel. We have somebody who thinks that he officiates a wedding. Cass thinks he officiates a wedding. Give a moment longer for people to, I think there should probably be like one more person unless they're not playing. All right. What do we think? Do we want to give it away?
Yeah.
All right. So it's actually the Keffel.
I almost cried.
I will not give any other context to that. So you'll have to read to find out why. It was very sad to write. And no, he does not officiate a wedding. And he does not find Arwen's sword. That's all I'll say about that. All right. So the first point goes to Tom. And now we have 4, right? So whoever Cass goes, wait, no. Whoever has the most points at the end will win.
Yes, 2 lies, 1 truth. That's
2 lies, 1 truth. So you have to pick the truth.
2 lies, 1 truth. It did confuse me a little bit at first because my brain was looking for 1.
I just didn't want to give away that many truths, so I figured I'd only give 1 away in each set. Okay, next one, and we'll make that a if we need it, we'll make that a practice round. Okay, so Ronan turns into a sea monster. Ronan eats a star, or Ronan gets stuck in the other world.
Tricky.
So you have to guess the truth, not the lie. So it's only one of those things are true.
So a sea monster, a star, or stuck in the other world. I just thought that Ronan eats a star.
I worded them all specifically tricky to the point where for all those watching, Katie was even like, which one?
Read this book and I don't understand it. This question. Because I think I know which one it is, and that I'm trying to like recollect what that is in reference to.
Okay. I'm seeing
we've got a guess for stuck in the other worlds.
We got 2 guesses. I'll give Cass a chance to. All right. So this point also goes to Tom. Yeah, Ronan eats a star. What that means, I won't tell anybody. He does not turn into a sea monster. That's all I'll say about that. And he does not get stuck in the other world. Also, all I will say about that doesn't mean that those things don't come up in different ways. Oops. Okay. All right. So far, Tom's pulling into the lead.
And this is Tom who did your map, right?
Yeah.
Up in the front of your book.
Yeah, if you have the book.
Buckler.
All right. Okay. We got a couple more. Let's see if we can maybe pull a tie. I'll send out 2 books if we have a tie. I don't care.
Do you want me to read?
Yeah. Yeah, you can read this one.
So we've got Kira makes a pact with death. Kira loses her memories. Kira burns down a palace. All very Kira things to do.
All very Kira things to do. I feel like Kira is the biggest wild card in this book. Surprisingly, simply because I feel like at the end of book 2, a lot of people didn't even know if she was going to get an arc in this book, or like if she was going to be a POV, right? So spoilers, she is, right? It's not that big of a spoiler. You find that out in chapter 2. But I think that a lot of people had no idea like what her journey was going to be in this book because of the way 2 ended. So I think it's a lot to be explored with that. We've got the map is still going strong. It is perfect, and I wasn't going to change it through any of the books. So absolutely, if you haven't seen the map, go look at it. It's really pretty. Pact with death. Cass says memories.
Cass is stressed.
Cass is stressed. I'm stressed. It's fine. We're all stressed. All right. So I don't think anybody got that one right. So Kira does not make a pact with death. She does not lose her memories. She doesn't. Don't know about anything else. But she does burn down a palace. Which one? I won't tell you. And we won't know. And that's okay. But she does burn down a palace. Because yeah, she deserves that. She needed that moment. All right, so this is the last one, and because I think the first question was tricky, right? If somebody gets this right, I will also potentially send out goodies to them too. But Tom, you've secured your spot, right? You've already gotten at least your book, and I'll message you after and figure out how to get that to you. Okay. Last but not least, Reagan kills a god. Reagan gets shot. Reagan turns into a siren. And I won't tell anybody anything else about this because this one is my favorite and the most tricky of them. Yeah, it's been a while, Cass. I'm not worried about it. We've got 1 vote for siren.
Apologies.
No, you poor thing.
Oh, wow. Have an answer.
We have an answer. I'm gonna give Cass a minute to see if she can pull it out, see which one was right.
I feel like the most plausible on there is just purely because it's Reagan. Oh, we've got another. Okay, Cass says gets shot. Terry says kills a god. And Tom says kills a god.
So I think that's everybody. Where she does kill a god. Not going to tell anybody which one. You'll have to read the book for that. But I think that means that Tom swept. Tom totally swept. You got everyone right now that I'm looking back, or 3 out of 4 right, I think. And then there were a couple others that guessed right as well in that one. So I'll thank you for participating. So that was the last of that. So Tom, you totally won that. I will get you a signed copy at some point. I'll message you and we'll figure that out.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, good job. Thank you guys for playing. I prefer to play games and make it fun rather than just sit and like talk about myself. But we do have some more questions that I figured we can wrap up with. Because we're gonna try and keep this thing under like an hour. So everybody can go on with their Saturdays. So yeah, this is the opportunity. People watching, if there were any other questions, please type them down, right? But we have a couple more that we can go through.
Okay, so we got to question 5, didn't we? So was there a character that surprised you the most in this book?
So surprised me. I think Kira in a lot of ways, because I think I didn't really know what the tone was going to be for her at the beginning of this, and I think she has evolved and changed so much from who she was in book 1, right? Book 1, there was just so much grief and anger that it was very hard for people to relate to her, I remember. And I think that in this last one, she really does soften and address things. And there are moments where she's vulnerable and she makes bad choices, because everybody does. But I was really surprised with the way her tenacity and kind of grief mixed together. And it was really hard for me to write her arc in this one. And it was one of the most rewarding ones for sure.
Yeah, I think she definitely softened a lot. Like, just based on reading the audiobook for the first book, like while you were sending me a couple of snippets from the third one, I was like, wow, this character she's really kind of good this time.
Yeah. And I think it was, again, so funny to be doing both projects at once, right? Because listening to her from the audiobook, where she was just still so stuck in her worldview, to where she is in book 3, where there really is this almost this step back, and she looks at things from a very distant perspective. So that was fun to have that contrast while writing.
Yeah, and so how did you decide on the tone for the ending?
I had a different ending planned out, where it was a lot darker and a lot sadder, and there was a part of me that like wanted to have that, like, I call it that Song of Achilles moment, where just like, it's gonna happen and it happens and you're still sad about it. And yeah, and I couldn't do it. I got there and I was writing the end and I was like in tears even thinking about it. And then I was like, no, I can't. There was a lot of stuff that was gonna happen, and I don't want to spoil what does happen, but I think that there's cost to what everybody does, and I don't think it's an easy ending. There's still a lot that has like happened where the characters are irrevocably changed, and I wanted there to be like just some sense of hope and some sense of triumph at the end, and I think that there's some of that. And I think it was right for what the series needed. I could have made it a lot meaner, and I don't think that's what.
I mean, because you went mean kind of throughout book 2 and like the start of book 3, I would say. So I feel like, yeah, the way you did it was it did justice to the rest of the tone, but also didn't let it dwell fully in like the lowest depths that the others went
Yeah,
to.
book 2 is by far the darkest of all 3, I think. There are some really tough moments in 3, but I think the end of book 2 is just like that. It's rough. It was rough to write. I know it's rough for a lot of people to read, but I promise 3 does take you on a journey, and there's good at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
So we had somebody Cass asked in the process of writing, when did I know I wanted to bring in death? That was actually from the beginning. He was as soon as I decided that it was not going to be just a standalone, I think really Kira was grappling with death in the first book, right? Grappling with Cedric's death and then eventually Aiden's, right? That's not, everybody knows at this point. And if you don't read the books, I don't know. And her guilt over that. And then there was so much death that was the context. And at that point, I was just like, what if death was a character?
Mm-hmm.
And what if there was this like manipulation throughout the series? And that's why there's just been so much misfortune for both the Branwins and the Mathenwees. So as soon as I was like that, I was like, all right, well, what kind of character is death? So I knew that he was going to come in eventually. And it's true to the myths as well, right? There's a lot of mythology around Arwen and, the god of death from Welsh mythology. I'm sorry, I think there's a little bit of delay. Katie, were you saying something as well?
I say you saw Henry Cavill cooking and then you combined it.
Yeah, after I figured out that he was going to be a character, there were definitely like moments of inspiration. There's a scene in book 3 where Death cooks, and it's absolutely inspired by a video that I saw of Henry Cavill, which is one of like my fan casts. If it was ever a movie, he would absolutely be Arwen. And there was a video of him cooking something, and I sent it to Katie immediately, and I was like, I have to make this a scene somewhere, and I did. So
I'm glad you. Okay, Ellie had to go to work.
yeah.
Lina. And Tom asks, "What's the next project? Are you staying? Do you want to save that for the end? Should we save that question for the end?
Yeah, we can save that one for the end. There's another one. Who is my favorite god from the world? Gwyn. Gwyn came in book 3.
Me too.
I love him so much, and I can't wait for people to meet him as a character.
With him.
And I think he's a large part of the reason why I want Safe to have more room, because they have some really good interactions and they're absolutely like counterparts. So yeah, Gwyn, hands down. He's very gruff and very like straightforward, and at the same time it's just like there's a heart of gold there too. I just loved that character.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun question. If I didn't use Welsh mythology, what other mythology would you use? I think that I picked right for this project, but I love mythology in general, and I think a lot of my work is based in like mythology or fairy tales or stories that I just like want to take inspiration from and reimagine, right? So I do love Greek mythology. I've had, plot bunnies for that that I'd eventually explore. I love Norse mythology because I just think it's so like cutthroat and like in your face. So I think that could have fit as well, right? Just a little bit farther north, and the Viking mentality I think would have paired well with the sailing aspect of this series.
In Griffin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In Griffin could channel that.
But I also think that like it needed a little bit more softness than that, especially because it was Kira and I wanted there to be more family room. And Welsh mythology is just so cool and so weird and so like off the beaten path that I was like, this feels right. Tom, yeah, Welsh is always the right choice.
Not biased.
Yeah, did we have any more questions, or do we want to go to that last?
So you answered the one about death, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay. So you know what? We're getting close to an hour anyway.
So there are a couple of questions if you wanted to do those, or did you want to finish there?
We can go back to the next project one, or am I missing something?
So there's the dragons question. I don't know if you wanted to answer that one.
That can be a fun post for another day.
Yeah. Okay, you can leave that one then.
Yeah.
The next project question.
Yeah. So I am taking a little bit of time before I work on publishing anything else for sure, but I am working on 2 projects at the moment, and they are branches away from the world. I am currently taking my first stab at true adult fantasy, right, with a high fantasy political intrigue story, which is affectionately being called Project Shadow King right now. I don't want to share any working titles yet. That might be a New Year surprise. So stay tuned for that. But I used that for my NaNoWriMo project. I didn't win Nano. I only wrote like 30,000 words instead of the 50K, but it was a really solid start and I've been loving doing that. And it has felt really, really good to just dive into that world because it's very new, very nuanced, very gray, and definitely more plot heavy than the Children of Lyr, which is definitely more of a character driven work. And then I have what I call my comfort project, which is a project that I started a while ago, but I'm finally just giving more attention here and there. And that's what's being called Project Babylon. I don't have a title for that one yet. But that is kind of like an Aladdin meets Anastasia meets parts of Peter Pan, just like this high fantasy, super tropey, new adult, perfect for that like gap between young adult and adult. It's high fantasy and it's just like very warm and sweet and fun. And the main characters in that one are just like kind and good. And I love that because so many of the other ones are like the Project Shadow King that I'm working on is very morally gray and like they're grappling with a lot of, really heavy themes. And this one's kind of the one I go to when I'm like, I need a breather and just something like light and happy. So everybody can expect that those will eventually be published. I'm also just not going to rush myself because I've learned my lesson.
Balance. But I love that you've got one that you're working on that's kind of sunshiny, and then you've got one that's very shadowy. So it's like a balance there.
Yeah, I'm a mood writer, so it definitely gives me the options that I need. And that's also not to say that the Children of Lyr world is going to be abandoned forever, right? I don't know if people heard the beginning, but I do absolutely have some spinoffs that are sitting in the back of my brain, and potentially like a sister series with some of the characters and new characters that people haven't met yet. I want to write them very, 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 very badly. And I feel like I have to give this trilogy room to breathe before I do. Otherwise, it's going to feel a little bit just like overkill. And I don't know, I'm a huge fan of writers that have very lengthy series. And I have seen writers that I love just drag certain series on and ruin their characters with it. So I'm like very cautious about that. So I definitely think that everything here needs some time to breathe. So this is the last of the Children of Lyr.
You've got time to always come back to things in future, and you've always got time to do that Griffin spin-off. I'm just saying.
Okay, I originally wanted to do a Griffin spin-off, but then I gave him a point of view in this book, and I feel like he told his story.
Okay, we'll just have to make do with this. As much, we love him. Cass will back me up on this.
I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will. So I think that unless there are other questions, I think we can probably wrap up. I did want to end with a thank you to you, Katie, for being such an important part of this with me. So much of my encouragement and my ability to continue was from our conversations. That also goes to some of the people that are watching right now. Cass was absolutely there the whole way. Cassidy, I don't know if she's still on. Renee, my editing team, everybody that has been a part of this. I'm just so grateful that people stuck around until the end of the series. And so thank you everyone that has had any part, even if it's just as a reader. If anything, that's one of the most important parts too. I just feel really honored and blessed to have had this opportunity to write a story that I care about. So Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us on your journey.
All right. Well, with that shot of depression, I feel like that's probably a good time to wrap.
So we're going to be enjoying it. So well done you for completing the trilogy. You did it. And it's a good one at that.
Thank you.
So,
and to those who haven't read it, right, Mother of the Moon is available now where books are sold. I know that there was an issue with the hardcover on Amazon yesterday where they were saying it was listed for like $60, and I think that's ridiculous. It's not listed for $60. Everything is under 30. And I'm pretty sure that's going to be rectified. So if you're waiting on a hardcover, please don't spend that much money on it because that's not the price. But aside from that issue, the book is available everywhere, and I'm not going anywhere. I will still be posting about my writing journey and all of that on Instagram, my newsletter, and that's all I've got for you tonight. Thanks again, Katie, for joining me, and have a good night, everybody else.